And there it is, 5 o'clock, 1700 as we know it in military time. Welcome everybody to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thank you for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community mentorship and learning. I'm your host, Dave Albright, joined by Dave Nava, the ever-present in the background there. I'm a solution engineer at Salesforce, Trailblazer. Each week, we invite a co-host or co-hosts to take part in the conversation so that we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. The focus for tonight's session is exploring Salesforce HLS roles in the ecosystem. So if working Salesforce in the health services role or community is of interest to you, this is the session for you. I'd like to welcome and briefly introduce our co-hosts for tonight's session, Lory Tibbetts, Jessica Berryhill, and Amanda Weeks. Lory is a 7X certified health cloud administrator at Molina Healthcare. She is a highly experienced registered nurse and the founder of the Healthcare Heroes Force community group that supports HLS professionals transitioning into Salesforce. Jessica is a 3X certified Salesforce administrator at Elevate Billing Solutions. She is an expert on dental healthcare administration and insurance billing and maximizing business efficiency and ROI. Lastly, Amanda is a 3X certified oncology data abstractor at Flatiron Health. She's a military spouse, a Hiring Our Heroes Salesforce fellow, the content manager for us here at Military Trailblazer Office Hours, and has over 15 years of healthcare industry experience. So great to have all of you co-hosting Office Hours with me. It'd be great if each of you could take a moment to introduce yourself further and share your Salesforce stories. Lory, would you like to lead us off?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, David. So yeah, my name is Lory Tibbetts. I was a nurse for 16 years, got burnt out during the pandemic after trying to pick up a lot of shifts, and then I switched to Salesforce after seeing an ad about it, trying Trailhead, and enjoyed it tremendously. Thought that it gave me the kind of mental stimulation that I craved. So I went through the process of getting certified as an admin, met a lot of people by being the founder of the Healthcare Heroes Force group. I found my tribe, and that belonging to something like that really was instrumental in my success in transitioning. And I have to say that my inspiration for forming that group was seeing how David Nava had the military trailblazer office hours. So yeah, that really helped a lot in my transition. And so my first job actually was at Booz Allen in 2022 after I got certified, and it is a military friendly company, I gotta say. So keep your eyes peeled out for openings at Booz Allen. It's a consulting partner. So if you get there, you have partner learning camp access, which I no longer now have. I got my job at Molina this mid-April, and I've been there a little over a month as an admin, and there's a lot to learn. I thought learning about Health Cloud via the Partner Learning Camp was good enough, but provider network management is a different beast. So that's it for my intro. Over to you, Jessica.
So I've been in the dental industry for, 17, 20 years, clinical and admin, specializing basically in insurance billing and patient accounts. COVID, I decided to go to a third-party billing company. We didn't want to deal with patients anymore. And doctors, they got a little crazy in COVID. So I also got bored with billing because being out of the office, there just wasn't as much to do. And I love tech. And even though going virtual, I was learning like 8 new dental softwares, it wasn't enough tech to learn. So I was introduced to Salesforce. I spent like 8 months just lost in the Trailhead until I met Lory. She just invited me to the Healthcare Heroes group one day, and then things finally started clicking on finding resources and finding her tribe, like walking me through like where to go and how to get educated and then how to get certified, and actually started making traction, and then getting those certifications. Where I worked didn't have Salesforce before. We worked everything on Excel spreadsheets. So I was actually able to sell Salesforce to my company. And this was at the time that everybody else was laying everybody off. So I was applying to leave for other positions, but also terrified to leave because there was layoffs and the competition in the market was atrocious being entry level. So I just stayed and I leaned into the opportunity that I was able to create. So I did a lot of business analyst, product owner, admin. I worked with 2 different implementation teams because our project didn't go well. And it was an experience. Just in the past week, I have left Elevate, and I'm now an independent consultant. We'll see how that goes. We're in a pivot again.
I like how you've like stopped, like that weight of that just set in as you said it. Yeah, we're actually I'm probably gonna come back around to that because that's an interesting one. You shaped your own career path, right? And that's I think an important
I do
thing
this
to
everywhere.
touch on.
Yep.
I do this everywhere. I love it. We'll come back to that one. Amanda.
Yes, Jessica, I love it. You're so brave. And I mean, you really have to be. And I think that something that you said was really interesting, gaining traction. I think that's what all of us are trying to do right now. It's what I'm trying to do. And I think that's why all these people are here. My name is Amanda Weeks. Obviously, they gave me a really great introduction. So happy to be here. And my career was healthcare. I was a registered nurse. I've done a lot of clinical research. I even worked in a hospital in college. So that was all that I knew. I'm also a military spouse to an active duty service member, and the lifestyle of that for all the people here, everybody knows it is hard. And anybody that's, in the military community and they're like, oh, you're a nurse, you're a registered nurse. That's great. You can do that anywhere. Your husband gets, PCS somewhere. And they're right. And I did do that. I could get a job right now, but it got hard. It got exhausting. Again, obviously the pandemic burned out a lot of healthcare people. But it wasn't just that. I mean, I think a lot of people go into healthcare because they care about people they want to help. But what I got really exhausted of was continually starting over from the bottom again and again. And I wasn't getting the kind of career growth and trajectory that I deserve and I want and I work really hard for. And I knew I needed to do something different that really would go with me wherever we go, because this is the life that I chose with my family. I live in Ohio. I attended a career fair at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It was like a year ago, actually, a little bit over a year ago. And they actually were talking about Salesforce, which I had heard of before, but I just was like, I'm not doing sales. I don't know sales, whatever. And I learned about it. I heard about the Hiring Our Heroes Fellowship, and I was like, this is kind of interesting. I think I'm going to take a little bit of a look, a little harder. Kind of started, again, I was lost, just like you said, Jessica. I was like, I don't know if I understand this. This is not, I don't know how I can use this. But it wasn't until I started finding the community groups here with Military Trailblazer office hours and Talent Stacker and Healthcare Heroes Force and so many other things that I realized this is huge. This is a community. And so I'm really happy to be here. Can't wait to talk about everything.
It's interesting that you bring up that Salesforce thing, because I think particularly a lot of vets, I had the exact same. Someone said to me like, hey, you should look at Salesforce. And I was like, I don't know what that is. And I don't do sales. And so I laugh every time I say that because I'm on the pre-sale side at Salesforce. And it's just like the irony not lost. Right. But I think sometimes that name kind of works against it, because it's like, what is Salesforce? Like if you're not in sales, you think it doesn't apply to you, but you can bend it and configure it for so many use cases. So for those joining for the first time, we always like to briefly explain the purpose of these office hours. These sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with military trailblazers and allies to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career related goals. The next hour is intended to be an opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up. We have a lot of people out here with varying experience and help answer questions from your perspective, which provide additional diversity of experience to the answers given. Please keep an eye on the chat window during tonight's session. I and others on the call will share a lot of great information there, including learning, networking, and employment opportunities. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during today's session, please feel free to do so. If you don't feel as comfortable speaking up, you can also post your questions in chat. Myself and Dave will do our best to monitor the chat window and also be looking for raised hands. Finally, tonight's session is being recorded. If you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, please let us know before speaking, and we'll make sure it's edited out of the final recording, or you can put it in chat and we'll pick it up on the time. So with that, let's get into the transition. Let's talk about this transition, because this is very poignant, and we had talked about it right before we started opening up the doors tonight. The transition from healthcare, which is this very specific, very specialized knowledge and training, right? Years and years, very similar to the military. It can be very intimidating to pivot out of that, right? Because it's like, this is, I think Jessica said it, right? This is all I've done. This is all I know. And a lot of military folks transitioning out or retiring, right, go through that very same feeling of like, this is all I know. How can I pivot? So let's talk about the pivot. I know Amanda already kind of hit on it. We already really all started to touch it, but what are your tips for that pivot? How do you find the courage to do it?
I'll jump in.
Easy two-pointer to start.
Yeah, you seriously have to have courage, and there's like no way around it. You really just have to jump in, and it really is scary. And you have to find the people that are going to back you no matter what, that really, they see your vision and they believe in it too. And I think that healthcare is definitely something you kind of trauma bond, don't you, Lory? And Jessica, and when you found your people, the people that you don't have to explain yourself to, the people that just get it, like, you're in the right place. And the military community is very similar to the healthcare community in that you just, if you know, and so you have to reach out, you have to be brave, you have to find the people and extend yourself. You'll know when it's not right. You'll know, this just doesn't feel right. These don't feel like, my people. I recently attended Texas Dreaming, and it was super fun, but wow. I mean, it takes a lot to put yourself out there. And you got to find the places where you can really be yourself. So I'll end it there.
Yeah, you and I have talked about that. Like, I flew aeromedical during COVID here in the DC area, and I still kind of miss it as much as I don't miss it, because just that bonding of the crews, right? When I would go into the trauma bays and hang out in there, just the things that happen in there, it's very similar to the military, where you have that kind of similar bonding and maybe dark sense of humor. Lory, Jessica, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's very dark.
Yeah. Well, just thinking about how hard healthcare is, how hard it is to gain the trust of your patients, how hard it is to save a patient, how hard it is to actually dig deep as to what the root cause of the problem, why the patient came to the hospital in the first place. If I had done something like that before, and I had helped my patients, if I had helped save lives, if I helped do a CPR and bring back the patient to life, those must be harder than this transition, right? So I just gotta keep saying, what I did before was harder. give it a try, give it a few months, and then apply the kind of resilience that we experienced in healthcare. Apply it here, and just move on and be agile. Eventually, I learned about agile method, and I was like, oh my god, it's like the teamwork in healthcare, and you've got teamwork too in the military. So just keep plugging away. That's
Yeah, that's
how I
interesting.
saw it. Yeah.
That's what I think I tell people is like, hey, you learned that skill set you're in now, particularly, in regards to this healthcare. It's not like you just take that test on a whim, right? It's not like you become a registered nurse or a doctor, just like, man, I can pull this off. I'm going to wing it. Maybe the doctors, but let's move on. So if you can do that, you can learn this, right? I'll actually, in my demos, will say a lot of times, since I'm briefing to military members, I'm like, so easy a pilot can do it, right? Like how hard, in fact, I got asked that today, how hard is it to set this up? And I was like, oh, sir, so easy a pilot can do it. So, you just have to look at it that way. You've done hard things before. You just got to transition it and just do a little bit each day. Jessica, you have any thoughts?
I'm not sure what else I can add. I tend to just channel my parents who just throw themselves at everything. I'm not that adventurous, but like I'm out in Washington, it's like Shannon Gregg gave me the great opportunity to go to her first Florida healthcare health and life sciences dream, and like, okay, I'm going out there and meeting Lory. Like I've never met these people, but I'm going to Florida. Like, never been there before, but like just getting out of your shell. Most people don't think it in the community that I'm in and in my work. I am a severe introvert and super shy, but like have developed and forced the persona that I am personable and that can talk to people. And it's just forced habit. And it's applying that to Salesforce as well. And it's something that I learned being in healthcare and having to sit. My first office job or first clinical job was you are going to sit next to the patient, you cannot leave the room, and you must make conversation. That was the rule by my first boss. And I mimicked everybody else in the office because they were born extroverts. I was not. So I learned to just copy and repeat. And now it's just applying that forward into my Salesforce because I'm terrified of touching anything in there, but I'm going to do it. And that's why I just approach all of it.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because it's one thing to be like, hey, I work in healthcare. I'm going to switch. I'm going to pivot this now and I'm going to learn Salesforce. It's a whole nother to take your intrinsic personality and shift it out and say, hey, I'm an introvert, but I'm going to force myself to be an extrovert. That is interesting.
Well, learning a new skill in a totally different.
Yeah. What could go wrong?
Details.
So what are the biggest challenges you face during these transitions, each of you?
The biggest challenge is right here. It's inside my head. It's not learning how to do flows. It's not, taking the next certification. Like those things are hard and they just require dedication, but it's like getting over the mental hurdle of I can do this, I can do hard things. I mean, I have, like Lory said, I have to remind myself I have done harder things than this. It still doesn't make it easy. It still doesn't make it comfortable. I feel uncomfortable about this every single day, but I want it. I like it. I enjoy it. I keep going back for more. I'm like, let's do this. But, it's just, I already forgot the question. What were you even talking about?
It was, what were the biggest challenges you faced during your transition from healthcare?
Remembering what the question was. That's my biggest challenge right there.
I hear you on that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I think healthcare really does prepare you, as does the military, for being with people. In the military, you have to be able to trust your trust your fellow members. You have to lead by example. It's very much like that in healthcare too. And you need to not forget everything that you have before. Just because I don't come from a technical IT background, I mean, I can run a dialysis machine. If that's not technical, I don't know what is. And that is really something that military members really need to keep in mind. The outside world, you know, they don't understand what it's like in the military. People outside of healthcare, they do not understand what it's like. And you have to be able to tell them what it's like in a language that they will understand, because everything that we have to say is extremely valuable and we can't discount ourselves. I discount myself. That is the hardest thing that I have to deal with is believing like I can do this. I think a lot of people are the same.
Yeah, I mean, I just went through it the other day. I did another cert for Slack, because Slack is in our space right now that Dave and I work in, and so I needed to get smart on Slack. So I did the Slack admin cert, and you know, Dave and I have a couple certs, and so you think like, man, no big deal, right? What's another one? By question 10, and this happens in every cert I take, every cert. By question 10, you're like, I'm gonna fail. I have no idea why I'm here. Why am I even in this industry? I should be, doing something else. And so it doesn't stop. You know, that imposter syndrome kind of happens all the time, and you got to quell that voice, right? And just say like, I got it. I'll figure it out. So Lory, Jessica, what are your thoughts on some of the hardships you had in the transition?
As for the hardship, when I was just about to look for a job, well, actually, way before that, I was already like looking forward to like, okay, how am I going to apply for a job as a tech person with no tech background? Because in healthcare, as a nurse, it's easy. You go to a hospital with your resume, it's almost a given that you will be hired because of the staff shortage. It's not the same in tech, especially if I wanted a remote job, because number one, I live in the boondocks, so there's not much local companies to apply for that would look for a health Salesforce professional, especially in the HLS industry. I don't think we even have a single HLS company here. So that was the main challenge for me. How do I rise to the surface and stand out among an ocean of applicants? So I really planned way ahead of that point in time that I would have to apply for jobs, so that, okay, I've looked at like LinkedIn optimization and branding. I've learned a lot from your, the military Trailblazer office hours sessions that has to do with career branding, building trust, also building the relationships, meaningful relationships, and the connections, so that by the time I was ready to apply, I really have bonded with a lot of people. I have built trust. I have provided value, so that the people who were sending interviewers my way, they were not afraid to vouch for me. So that is something that I would like the audience to really get in their heads, so that before you even get there, start early, build that network, build that trust, and try to have your network connections have you in mind the first, when they see some opening that might be a good fit for you. Like, guess my second job actually was like that. One of my first connections, when I was just about to start the Healthcare Heroes Force group, she was probably the first nurse that I sent a message to. And we've been good network connections ever since. And when she was about to leave this role, not because she did not like it, but because she decided to be a stay-at-home mom, I was the first one in her mind to recommend to her boss. And that really helped a lot in me getting this job, going through the application process to being hired in just 2 weeks. So, and that also, I would also want to emphasize that that person, when I first met her, she was at the same stage as me. So just because you are now still looking for your first role in Salesforce, don't ignore the people who are in the same stage. Don't just target, okay, the hiring managers and the recruiters, but still build that relationship with others in the same stage as you, because you'll never know. They might be the ones who will be like, okay, I'm ready to move on. I will be leaving this position. I'm going to reach out to so and so because I have seen how good he is as a team player or as a problem solver, things like that.
Yeah, you don't really know where the lead will come from, right? And it might be someone that you're with. It might be someone on here. It could be anywhere, right? Where they get into a company or they get into a position and then all of a sudden they realize they need someone. Networking is networking, and I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to horn in on your time, Jessica. I feel like that's super important is that even though Salesforce is huge, it's like this vast ocean, but it's really not. It's a big, small community. And I saw that firsthand at my first Dreaming event. It was so fun, but man, you could just see it in front of you. These people know these people who know these people, and it all works that way. It really, really does. And it really is about making relationships with people. And like the military, it is a big, small community, and everybody knows everybody who knew somebody else, and so you don't want to forget that along the way, and your reputation will precede you. I do believe that, so you want to keep that in mind. So sorry, Jessica, your turn.
Jessica was enjoying her introvert time. She's like, no,
I know to
please
talk.
enjoy.
I just love the questions because I forgot what we were doing.
We'll switch. Either that or I can switch. Your choice.
I was just going to speak to that because, I honestly kind of took the last 6 months off of LinkedIn and socializing just because the work stress got to be too much. But just in the last few weeks, I've been transitioning to more of consulting kind of role versus going after these admin positions. And out of nowhere, a company that I haven't talked to in a year reached out to do contracting with them. So you never know. So making those connections can be amazing.
One of the byproducts or at least I tell myself this, of the layoffs from it kind of really started in early 2023, right? But in a lot of ways, that kind of pollinates, right? It's almost like leaves or seeds falling in the wind. And as the people go out and start to get jobs at other places, your connections and your network ends up growing. Now, people coming into the ecosystem, it's a little more complicated because you don't have that network yet. But groups like this, or groups like Lory's running and things like that, where you have specialties and verticals and things like that, and you meet people, you never know where they'll end up, and you never know what positions will open on theirs as companies grow and companies wane as that happens. Yeah, it's that networking thing I can never say enough about. And ironically, I'm a bit of an extrovert externally, but kind of an introvert when it comes to networking. This Salesforce and the ecosystem has really taught me the power of networking, and I cannot say enough about it. Okay, so let's talk about skills transfer, especially since you were specialized in healthcare. Which skills or knowledge from your healthcare background have been most valuable in your Salesforce career to date? We're gonna start with Jessica because I know she's enjoying her introvert time.
My ability to document the heck out of anything, details, because, in healthcare, if you don't write it down, it doesn't exist. You get sued, you're at fault. So in business analysts, anything with Salesforce, it's all about documentation. So it's just what we do in healthcare. Like, you got to write it down. And then also being able to actually listen to patients and be able to communicate that with them. My dentist hated me for talking as simply as I did with our patients, because patients would come out of the clinic, not have a clue what was diagnosed, not have a clue what was recommended or why they're in the pain that they were. And then I'd have to re-explain everything in layman's terms. And I'd be comparing different procedures to like Toyotas versus BMWs, but the patients got it. The dentist didn't appreciate it, but the patients got it. And it was just finding a way to take what the professionals were saying and merge it to what the patients were hearing and being able to like link them together.
I am so going to jump on that, Jessica, because that communication is so huge. But it's not just, can you speak to people? It's, can you speak to people at their level? And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but I mean that like you have to be able to adapt your communication style. And the fact that you had enough empathy to be able to explain something to a patient in a way that they can actually understand it speaks so much more of you, and it makes me kind of hate this dentist that you worked with. And I've met a few of those, right? But seriously, like,
wonderful dentist, but yeah, well, I also would swear with the patient, so
yeah, no, because I mean, you do, like, you want to feel like especially when you're in a vulnerable position, like you're getting your teeth pulled and it hurts, or you're in the hospital and you're in pain and you're scared, and you want somebody that is going to sit with you and look at you and not talk over you and not confuse you. They're going to just be at your level and say, hey, like, what are you scared about? What are you confused about? How can I help you? And so again, I think I've already forgot what the question is, but it's transferable skills. And it's that ability to make relationships with people in a meaningful way. It's listening to actually understand. It's not listening to respond. It's just being dynamic and trusting in yourself and knowing like, yeah, I could talk over you with all this technical jargon, and maybe that makes me feel good about myself, but then you haven't left that person with a good feeling. They don't know what's going on. It's being able to adapt your communication style in a way that's relatable. And then the other thing you said, documentation. Oh my gosh, healthcare is all about documentation. I mean, and like you said, if you didn't chart it, it wasn't done. Same thing with patient care. If you didn't, I can hear my like nursing professors, if you didn't chart it, it's not done. And you're like, and it's crazy because all of the things that you do, it's so fast. And it's like, and I have a problem with writing a novel. And so like, I had to really work on that, because you want to expand upon all the things that you do, right? But from a Salesforce perspective, some of the stuff that I have had contact with and documentation, I am appalled. I'm like, where's the documentation? Like, how do you know? And it's like, I think that's going to be one of my best skills, is just being able to be like, no, like, we want to save our future sanity by documenting this now so that we know what actually happened. So there's that.
We're going to have to take a 30-second mindfulness break to get everyone calm back down, except Jessica, who's in her happy introvert space right now. She's like, all right, keep it cool. No, Dave Meg made a comment in here. We do this in pre-sales world too, right? And Dave Nava kind of hit it on the stakeholder communication, right? Like, we do pre-sales, like we're talking to the customer about what Salesforce does, right? If I talk about the engagement layer of the tech stack, like selling to a customer, they're just like, what does that mean? Right. So and I think that's a great skill set from the military or healthcare, right, is being able to break that down, particularly in the military, where sometimes you had to break it down to a layer even lower than the lowest denominator, because you're like, okay, I'm working with someone special here. I got to really, really break this down for you. So yeah, Rob, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think the solutions engineer roles as well, and maybe the technical architect roles. Those need to go a little bit the other direction too, where you need to talk with like the programmers, the developers, the engineers, all that side. So you got to be able to like shift, gears between your customer, maybe at the level that you were just talking about, both of you, but then also like then you got to take that message that you heard from the customer and be able to say it in a way that the introverted, prefer to be in the dark, whatever person that misinterprets everything that a person says and thinks it all means something to do with programming. You got like, no, we need this feature, or we need it to do this thing or that thing, and just listen to me. So anyway, that's just another direction that I think you get, because I was in healthcare as well, not like to the extent that you were. I was a ranger medic, so we did kind of like PA level stuff, in the dentistry, but with ugly dentistry when you really had to take a tooth out or something. but I don't know. I mean, you get that from having to communicate with officers. Like, that's how I always think of it. Is it's not just leadership, or it's leadership, not just engineering. So just remember that everybody that was in the military that was on the NCO side, that's all good off on a rant here, but I always feel like that the modern healthcare, if it had that same structure, instead of taking nursing and saying, oh, you need to have more and more and more advanced degrees, and now poof, you're in charge of the business line of this unit or whatever, having never had anything to do with that really. But anyway, if you had that kind of duke it out at every level, like, oh, you're really the nurse, the head nurse NCO, not like the head nurse officer. And so fine, have a business person that runs the unit, but like, I'm the one that knows about my patients and stuff like that, and I'm still doing stuff. But anyway, just all you people, don't forget your communicate with officer skills that you brought from the military for everybody that's here, because you need that to go that direction too.
Yeah, we're going to talk about soft skills in a second. That's a good segue into it, right? You got to know the whole audience, right? And that might be someone asks a technical question and you see that they have a technical background, so you got to amp it up and go full nerd. That other person may be a business person, and you can see in that look in their eye, like, I'm going to bring this down to a very low level, and we're going to talk about what's the functionality and the value that this would bring to you. Jessica, you had a hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like in our examples, I was talking to the patient versus we sit in that spectrum of we have to relay what the patient is saying all the way up to those specialists. And what do those specialists need to know about that patient? And putting it in how they can understand it. And even though we may not understand all of those terms, because I don't understand half of what the specialists know and say to me.
Yeah, so we're gonna switch and hit on soft skills in just a second. Let's quickly take a mid-period picture here. All right, so we're at the midpoint. Before I forget, which I often do, and Dave usually has to ping me and say, hey, look what time it is. Let's get a group photo for sharing on social media. This is always important because we always need to be branding, as we've talked about. We'll plan to post this on LinkedIn and Twitter tomorrow, and we'll tag everyone in the photo. If you only have your first name showing in the Google Meet and want to be tagged, please feel free to include your full name in the chat window. Makes it much easier for us to tag you. And for everyone who wants to grab a screenshot and to participate in the photo, please unmute your video and we'll grab the screenshot. For those of you who routinely join us, please hold off on any comments and prepare for me to have my mouth open, because it's inevitable. I always take it with my mouth open. So I will give you a countdown, and 3, 2, 1. No, I just look like a deer staring at headlights. You win some, you lose some, or most. Okay, back to soft skills, right? I love to talk about soft skills, believe it or not, which is funny. Which soft skills from your healthcare background have been most valuable in your Salesforce career? Lory, you've been kind of quiet. Would you like to kick it off?
Well, critical thinking, problem solving, and teamwork definitely are very
Whoa. I lack on all three of those. You got to bring it back down to that lower level for me. I'm kidding.
Well, you know about that. Even in the military, you are constantly bombarded with situations where you have to like instantly think of what the quickest solution would be, and and try to see way ahead, like, okay, if I do this, what will be the repercussions, and then just kind of see which ones would be the best approach, right? So that's also true for healthcare. And of course, it's healthcare. It's hard to do anything in healthcare without teamwork. It really is an interdisciplinary thing, that what we refer to when you get the doctors, the lab technicians, the radiologists, etc., physical therapists, etc., get involved in planning for how to get our patients to where we want our patient to be, hopefully as close to the baseline as possible. So it's the same way with now that we're in Salesforce. Okay, the pain points. What are the pain points? What's the best way to address those pain points? What would be the most cost-effective solutions? And then of course you gotta talk with your team as well, whether those are actually doable. And of course you have to see this within the scope. How much does the client have as budget? Those are things. And even in healthcare, we look at those things like, is this actually necessary to do? Like, let's say a diagnostic imaging that the doctor wants, like a CAT scan or MRI. Like, is this really necessary? Because this is what we want to see. Do you really want to order this? Or we look at like, okay, this is the insurance of the patient. We'll have to have an approval for this, etc. Those things. So they easily can transfer over to Salesforce.
Yeah, I agree with the team, right? Even little stuff when you're doing consulting, right? A lot of times you're on a team. There may be a BA, a dev, 2 consultants, right? Each consultant might specialize in certain things. Like, who do you utilize for what, right? And knowing how to pull that resource and explain to them what needs to be done. It all kind of correlates. Amanda, you were getting ready to say something?
You know it. Here I am. I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. I've had to explain myself a lot, like, how in the world does healthcare relate to Salesforce and why, in terms of soft skills, like, we've talked a lot about relationship building. We've talked a lot about communication. Obviously, I'm not going to harp on that now, but what Lory said, critical thinking, the ability to prioritize, the ability to organize yourself. I mean, when I worked my background in nursing is heavy critical care. And, in the emergency room, a very, typical night is, you got a 45-year-old man with chest pain. You got a 80-year-old nursing patient with a blood pressure of 60. And you got a trauma coming in and, this guy's vomiting blood. Where do you go first? How do you do that? How do you organize yourself? How do you organize your resource, your best resource, your brain? What do I do first? How do I prioritize that? It's different, but it's the same. You have to understand, okay, what is most important right now? All of that sounds important, right? And it all is, but how do you do all of that? How do you get all of that done? You use your team, number one. If you don't, you will fail. I failed sometimes. I learned that pretty quickly, right, Lory? You learn that pretty quickly to use your team and to delegate. And like I said, you have to learn what's important. What do you need to do now? What can you do later? And then also, I guess I will talk about communication, because why not? The communication piece, if you need to get a message across to your stakeholders, you might as well give them something that is going to get their attention. If you're talking to C-suite professionals, you want to really make your pitch for Salesforce, you're going to have to give them some metrics that they understand. Give them the return on investment. Same thing as a nurse working with doctors. Like, I want you to come see this patient. No, I'm going to go rounding. No, you're going to come see this patient, and here is the evidence as to why. Here are the labs. Here's the blood pressure. Here is my assessment. This is where you need to go, or this person is going to code. Go. Now, it's the same thing. Military, Salesforce, you just have to be able to have the confidence to pitch your pitch. And that's a soft skill, even though I kind of said it hard. Now it sounds like really hard, but I'll leave it there.
I was getting ready to go check the patient. I don't even have a patient in the house. I was like, all
Yeah,
right,
I
I'm
know,
going.
right?
I don't know where I'm going, but Amanda's on fire.
Gonna say,
Jessica,
it's not
you looked
any
like
worse
you were
than me
gonna.
trying to like body check the dentist from like going into the wrong room. So like don't go past here. Pivoting, just being able to pivot when things aren't going well or something else creeps up. And then I think also keeping calm as much as possible and having grace for each other, because getting mad at each other, your team members, doesn't make things go any easier. I mean, that's just life in general. So, I've over the past year really embraced my humor more than anything, because I would have lost my mind more than I have at work. So
That's pretty funny. Yeah, it's funny too. I think the thing that always catches me off guard is I'm always like, oh, the things I have done before, right? Nobody dies if I mess something up, if I mess up a flow in Salesforce, if I give a bad demo, if I give a bad, but yet you get pretty amped up, right? It's surprising how worked up you'll get giving a demo, either pre-sales or post-sales, when the pressure is on and you're on a blocker and the end of the sprint is coming. That pressure is pretty funny. And you're like, I did life-threatening things before, and now I'm getting worked up about this. And it's like, it's just software, right? But it still creeps in. It's interesting how that does happen. Let's talk about the hustle, right? Because we've already touched on the courage it takes for the pivot, right? And Lory kind of talked about it already. You were top of your game, right? In nursing, healthcare. Now you have to go down to the entry level. And that is a hit to the ego. It's a hit to the wallet. There's a whole lot of things that happen there that it's like, do I want to take that on? And there's some hustle that has to happen too, right? You don't walk out of one where you're highly sought after with one skill set, and now you have this new entry level skill set, and you're just a little fish among many fish in the pond, and you're trying to stand out. And so there's some hustle involved for sure. So what was your initial expectation versus the reality of the amount of work required to break into the industry?
Well,
That's a two-pointer.
For one thing, I kind of accepted early on that I would be entry level, and I think that was a negative actually, because I set the bar too low for myself. I did not realize that coming from a tech background, I wasn't really entry level for the first role that I got into. And what do I mean by that? Because I got into a health account working on a healthcare project, my experience in the healthcare industry already got me into that non-entry level. But because I thought I was really entry level, I did not have much experience with negotiations, especially when the talks about salary came. I immediately blurted out my number. Later on, I learned better with my second job. I learned much better to negotiate the salary expectation conversation. So yeah, don't think of yourself as truly entry level when you're looking for that first job, because don't say yes to an offer of like 40, 45. You deserve more than that. Okay. Another expectation that I had was I thought I really had to have deep technical knowledge even for an entry level. And then later on realized that, hey, there were even friends of mine who got their first Salesforce role without their first certificate in Salesforce. They were still working on that, but yet they got a job, especially as something like business analysis or customer success, project management. So yeah, I realized later on that soft skills mattered more in those in the first job, Salesforce job.
My first offer, they said, "What would it take?" And I said, "I don't know. What am I worth? Who does that?" I'm surprised they didn't be like $2. Like, okay. Yeah. So that's one thing you just don't know in the military, right? You don't know how to negotiate a salary at all. I don't even know if I still do. I'm really horrible at that, but yeah. Iris, you have your hands up, and Dave, I see you, and then we got a question in the chat as well. So Iris, why don't you lead us off?
Thank you so much for being here, and you guys are all superheroes. I was just like, even before you go into Salesforce, you're superheroes as nurses. So I've just always been told I have like these great lofty ideas, and like I don't even have the talent or the industry knowledge that you guys are coming into the ecosystem with. And I have all these lofty ideas about where technology is going. What's in the future for you guys? Like, there's so much like AI going on, and I see so many new companies going on about what they're hoping to do with just the technology. How do you guys see yourselves fitting into that, or your industry knowledge helping you as you kind of grow in the ecosystem and all that?
I'm so excited about it. I think it's so exciting, and I have to fight myself because it's like shiny objects, and I have ideas too, Iris. We've talked about this a lot, I think having industry knowledge, like the military people, in the room, like healthcare, you really have, you don't have to be wed to it, but you should definitely, lean into it because it does make you stand out. I think it does. I just, it's a little bit overwhelming, all of the different possibilities, obviously, with AI and different things. As I gain more experience and more technical prowess, all of those things, I think it would be amazing to really get into some of the stuff that's getting super innovative and just be on the front lines again of something new.
Yeah. I did roll my eyes at AI. Everyone loves AI right now. And I do too, as long as it's listening, because we know. So Dave, how about you go, and then we'll pick up Julian's question in text. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, so I'll read Julian's question so the panel can be thinking about it while I'm chatting. Julian thanks everyone and says, "Hey, do you have any tips or advice for how best to frame relevant experience while maintaining authenticity?" So good question, Julian. My quick story was, I put in chat, hey, my motto is always negotiate. And my story was, I had applied when I got out of the military to Salesforce for a number of positions, and I never got a call back, never got any indication that they'd received my application whatsoever. So I was like, all right, well, I will put that dream on the shelf and we'll take it off from time to time and admire it, dust it off, and we'll see how it goes in the future. And I went to work for a partner for a year. Building experience, was a solution consultant, had a lot of fun. And then lo and behold, Salesforce hit me up on LinkedIn. A recruiter said, hey, do you want to interview for a position? And so I took the interview. It went well. And when we were negotiating salary, they offered me something lower than I was currently making. And again, this is Salesforce, right? It's the mothership. And it was my dream job. And I said no. Because I knew that I was worth more than that because the company's paying me more than that. So I said, hey, listen, I can't accept that offer. What I will accept is if you can match them, because I knew that Salesforce, being the big company that it is, the total benefits package would far exceed what I was currently offered. And even though the money was the same, the total financial impact of making that switch would far outweigh just the the one-to-one salary transfer. So always, I say always negotiate. The worst they're going to say is no, and you go, okay, well that's good. And then you make a decision: do you accept their offer or not? But if you don't negotiate and advocate for your value, you'll never know. So I'll go ahead and kick it over to Julian for his question, and we'll get some thoughts there.
If you could say again, the question was tips. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you all have any
tips or advice on how best to frame relevant experience while maintaining authenticity?
Right. Lory is amazing, and she often is very generous with her time. And she was my lead for the Salesforce Talent Alliance that was helping healthcare, individuals like myself break into the ecosystem. Jessica Perka, I see you. Obviously, I know you were there too. And Lory helped us really framing, it's really hard to take like a nursing background, obviously that's mine, in patient care, and then somehow make that seem relevant for technology. How do you do that? It's not the same, but you have to use some ChatGPT. I used a little bit of that today. And as my friend David Nava also helped me with too, the STAR method is also a really good way to frame your experience so that you're really showcasing, what the situation was and how you're getting results. That's what they're going to want to see in the tech space. They don't want to see a list of, ASCII type things, which we can get that way in healthcare. I can do this and I have these skills and this and this and this, but like, what is your impact? And so stay true to whatever your experience is. Maybe it would be helpful to know, what your experience is. Maybe it's military, but just, don't lose the impact and what you feel like you brought from that position, because that's what they want to hear. They want to know how you, whatever you did, how you made the team better. I hope I answered that.
No, and it's a hard one. That's a 2-point question. We have one from Enrique about certs that I'll throw out there, and then I think we'll have just one more time for a closing question. So Enrique asked, what are some certs or skills to pair with your Salesforce certs that could help give you an edge in the Salesforce job market for an entry-level position? Any input on that? Thoughts?
Well, I had somebody tell me that obviously if you're in the market to get certs and really solidify your experience, a lot of the clouds, everything is built on Sales Cloud and Service Cloud. So really understanding that if you're looking to kind of get into those consultant level type certifications, that's a good place to find it. But as it relates to outside of Salesforce, I think go with things that you're interested in. Get on, Udemy and get on Coursera and find stuff that obviously will translate into technical stuff, but obviously do something that you're interested in. I'm not maybe the best person to speak on that. I think maybe the Davids could speak more with their extensive experience.
Mr. Nava?
Just a quick comment. I would look at what the ecosystem needs and try to make yourself a double or a triple threat. So Dave Albright recognized that coding is valuable, and a lot of roles are asking folks to be an admin that can code, or involving coding in some way. And so he taught himself how to code. When I was coming into the ecosystem, I just happened to have a PMP and an Agile. I was a certified Scrum Master, and they didn't hire me solely for my consultant skills because I didn't have any at that point. They hired me because they had a project manager who wasn't as strong as they wanted them to be. They saw my project management certs and my experience, and they brought me in to consult, but also to help that person out. So if you can plus up your skills in an area that you recognize the ecosystem needs, it's one more reason to hire you. And that's going to change, right, from time to time, depending on, what the focus is. Right now, I would say it's always going to be coding, but also AI. AI is huge. I put in there Agile. You can get even an Agile practitioner certification. Especially if you want to be a consultant, that will help you out.
Yeah, some of this Einstein GPT stuff, Slack, Omni Studio, they're all shortages. Jessica, you had a comment.
I was going to speak to that as well, of like leaning into like what the company's needs are that you're working for,
Yeah.
or that you're aiming for. The consultancies that I've like interviewed for, what their aim is and what their goals are, like maybe yours might align with that, which would make you interesting as well. I've had a number of recruiters reach out looking for, because of my billing background, looking into like the billing certification, Salesforce billing, and things like that. So finding something in your background that you can leverage. And then also my love of processes of doing the PMP as well. So still trying to decide on my next endeavor.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Dave and I usually look at the generalized, what is the industry looking for? And Salesforce Ben is really good. They'll put out posts pretty routinely like, hey, there's a shortage of this and this is pretty hot. These are the trends, the niches, I guess you would say. But if you make a great point, if you're targeting a specific vertical or company, right? If you're even more specific and they're big on CPQ, go out and start getting on Trailhead and CPQ and then build up a dev org in it to bring that to them as a portfolio to say, look, I've got skills in this. Yes, I'm self-taught, but I am motivated and I can build some stuff and I'm willing to learn. And I think most people will take that over someone who's got 20 years of doing CPQ, but maybe isn't super responsive or thinks they know it all, right? There's a whole bunch of ways to make yourself kind of stand out. Easier said than done sometimes, but yeah, there's some great points there. So we are just a little after the top of the hour. Before we close, I'd like to thank Lory, Jessica, and Amanda for co-hosting tonight's session. Been absolutely awesome having you here and getting your perspective on the topics we discussed. Any last minute thoughts?
It's a pleasure to be here. Just happy to see everybody here, and I know that everybody's really hustling. So keep it up.
Always hustling. All right.
Raised her
So
hand.
what's that?
Chelsea raised her hand.
Oh, go ahead, Chelsea.
No, it was a mistake. Sorry.
Oh yeah, I do that all the time. I go to send a heart or something and I always raise my hand. People are like, what do you need? And I'm like, sorry, wrong button. So with that, with my messing up buttons, with that, thank you all for attending. I hope to see you next session. Have a great Wednesday night, and keep in mind on the calendar, July 2nd will be on a Tuesday, and we'll put that out on social and make sure everyone knows about it. But yeah, so our next one will be 19 June followed by 2 July. So
Thanks, everybody.
have a great Wednesday night.
Thank you.
Take care.